they will be more confused about math, and their math studies will also drop. This is not our goal. So, and it might also lead a sense of failure to English, so that they will be unconfident to learn English. Another challenge is that the students are not, and teachers are not yet prepared to face bilingual education. So the obstacles in front of students are their last generation, which is their parents don't speak English, so that they are not living in the English environment. And also they lack the habit and confidence to speak English. They think that their poor English is a shame to them. So this is a big problem. And the obstacles in front of teachers is that they are not professional English teachers, because in many rural elementary schools, English courses are often combined with other subjects such as math or science. So it cannot be the courses cannot be professional enough. So, and the common concern is that bilingual education, if we use too much English, it will wipe out the importance of our Chinese culture and Taiwanese culture. So our goal is to improve both the students and the teachers' confidence to embrace English. And here comes to my solution. Our solution one is to embrace Duolingo and combine digital education and bilingual education. So what is Duolingo? Duolingo is a language learning app that is suitable for beginners and intermediate learners. So looking into Duolingo, its strength is that it's suitable for beginners because it starts from the most basic concepts of English learning. And it's in the form of a game. Like you can select answers and it will pop out that whether it's correct or wrong. It's more like a question and you are fighting against yourself, and in the process you are learning English. And it's easy to use, and the students can even use themselves to learn by themselves without the teacher's assistance in the future. So the impact is that they'll build confidence in English learning because they are winning this kind of game and they are gaining their confidence. And there will be a positive competition between students because they want to see that who is the better game player. And this can lead to everyone's improvement in English. And the goal is to make them self-motivated to learn and to lay the foundation for future courses, because now we are stabilizing our English basic techniques. And now the process is that we'll first invest in iPads, since Duolingo is an app, so we need to download the app on iPads and share it to school. And then we need to teach them how to use those iPads, of course. And we'll use Duolingo in one English class per week so that we can really embrace this technology. And we'll encourage self-motivated studying. The side benefits are that we can embrace digital education, which is also a trend in this decade. And we can train self-study skills and also inspire a second foreign language learning in the future, because Duolingo offers a lot of language learning, not only English. For example, Japanese or German are all available to learn. Another solution is that we are going to combine indigenous culture with bilingual education, because as I have mentioned, a big problem of bilingual education is that we might lose our own culture. This is a problem. So we are going to solve this problem by introducing those kind of videos to teach them how to use English to describe our culture, like close to life culture. And we are targeting the higher graders, which are 5th and 6th graders, so that they have basic English ability to digest those informations. And also in those one lessons per week, we can have interactions between the teachers and the students. So for example, teachers can role play as tourists who needs help by Taiwanese, and the students can provide some help and some introduction to Taiwanese culture to the teacher, so that we can reach an interaction and the study will be more efficient. So by this course, we can lead to the benefits of we can learn practical English in life, because we are embracing our own culture and embracing our lives, and that we are trying to help the tourists, which will likely occur in our lives. And we can encourage students to speak up to foreigners, so that in the future when they meet foreigners, they will know how to reply them. And also we can develop a multidimensional learning. Instead of only passively absorbing information by reading, we can let them read, listen, and speak, so that they can really develop in a multidimensional way. So inline English leads to students truly improving English by many aspects. And also teachers can catch up by the bilingual trend and the digital education trend. So moving on to our quantitative analysis. The first year, we'll spend about 650K NT dollars on iPads, and corresponding will cost us $500,000 of NT dollars, and then as the above. And we will have a deficit in the first year, but in the second year we will eliminate our deficit because we have already established our fixed cost and we don't need to add fixed costs anymore. So the timeline, we are going to invest in iPad cards in the first year, and then we will start our Duolingo courses in the next year. And by 2027 and after, we wish to keep on improving the variety of the things of those explorational courses, and for those and upgrade the difficulties so that we can gradually improve our English skills. So students self-motivated and confidence plus a dedication of teachers is our ultimate goal to lead to effective bilingual education. In conclusion, the solutions I provided, language app and cultural courses, can lead to a successful rural bilingual education. And we wish that this will be helpful for rural elementary schools. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Yes. Okay, sure. So because Duolingo, how it works is that it will provide questions and you will answer the questions and it will pop up that, oh, you got the right answer. And because if we utilize the free version, it only gives you 5 chances to live. It's like you have 5 lives. So students can compete with each other that who can live longer with their lives so that they can be motivated to, oh, I want to win my classmates, I want to be the top. So this is kind of utilizing their behavior of competing to lead them to self-motivated studying. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, so answering the first question, my thought of low income and combining with cram schools is that because now cram schools, the prices of cram schools are very high, and a normal family cannot really afford this kind of like cram school education, and let alone those with low incomes. So my plan is to, because school education, it requires less money, and so the low income families they don't need to be accessible to cram schools resources, they can still have great education. This was my thought. And about borrowing money, we believe that we can provide a plan and we can apply for extra budgets, such as like in the experiments, if you want to buy some expensive equipment, we can use a similar method to apply this kind of plan, because this is the government's trend and is the government's policy. So we wish that we can really apply a plan to win more budget. And because in the second year we will eliminate our deficit, so I think it's feasible. Thank you.
It's a good presentation. I just have a short question. So you mentioned Duolingo.
Yes.
So are there any alternative products in the market right now? Because I think some AI products actually.
Yes. So first, Duolingo is let me switch to Duolingo. Duolingo is qualified. It's more qualified than ChatGPT because Duolingo itself had already provided some tests for some high school students to take, and many colleges had already admitted those tests, the quality of those tests. So that proves that Duolingo is much more reliable than other things in the market. And because it is it's had already developed for a long time, and compared to the other apps that aren't that famous, the popularity and the quality that many university trust can prove that this is really the best choice. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
It's possible to allow those stuff back to their house.
I think maybe the school can try. My plan now is to share iPads in schools, and that when they are more familiar with Duolingo, they can try it later. Yes, thank you.
那就请下一位。
I will begin on my first word. As part of Taiwan's project to reach the bilingual country 2030, there's always the need to address the urban-rural education gap. And here, as contestant 2, I'm bringing up my proposal to bridge this gap between urban education and rural education to bring bilingualism to rural Taiwan. First, an executive summary. We want to have an overview of what the problem is. What is the challenge that rural schools face trying to implement bilingual education, and what are the trends that we can really take advantage of here? Third will be finding synthesis, seeing what exactly key pressure points we want to push in order to make the change that we want, and lastly, the details of my proposal. First, let's talk about the first problem plaguing these rural schools, because it's twofold. The first is the lack of teachers. Urban areas tend to offer higher salaries for English teachers, making it significantly more desirable for them to take these jobs. For example, the average salary for a public school English teacher is around 60,000 to 70,000 NTD per month. So under our current budget of only 1 million NT per year, we can only really hire one more teacher for each of these rural schools. And we believe with this one teacher, we need to be quite sparing with our remaining funds because of how expensive staffing is. Second, it's very inconvenient for these teachers to teach in these rural schools because they're usually in highly remote locations, and that either this teacher has to move all the way to the school's vicinity or they need to take hour-long commutes with high prices. This also comes into the issue of training, in which teachers have to receive training usually in major cities like Taipei rather than the cities that they're housed in, meaning that they're inconvenient and underexperienced. And lastly, there's the issue of overwork. We're not going to be able to get quality bilingual education in these rural schools if the system remains. Because teachers have to manage administration, they have to manage class plans, and they teach multiple classes at once. This leads to lesson plans being more sloppily made or being just copy and pasted over and over again. And we believe this is not going to result in the quality education that we're looking for, and it deters teachers from working. Later on in my appendix, I'm going to show you that which priorities teachers really look at, and it seems that location and commute is ranked currently 4th in what determines where a teacher wants to work at. So the conclusion for this finding is that apparently only 25% of these teachers in these rural areas are really certified as qualified teachers. Like they only make up 25% of the population, which is incredibly concerning for bilingual education. Next, let's talk about the lack of digital education. This is an obstacle in the sense that students do not access other channels to learn English. If our only options are just physical teachers in the school teaching, like I previously stated, they can only really just hire one more teacher with the budget, and with that leftover money, what can they really do with it? So because of the lack of digital education, you can see from the Child Welfare League, 12.5% of these rural schools have 80% of these students participate in online courses with devices at school. These people in rural areas simply do not have access to more digital devices, and that 53.1% of schools hope that there could be government intervention, that the public could help donate devices to them because they find that their current supply of digital devices are lacking. And lastly, 33% of children at home, when they're learning through online courses, they're using, only 33% of them have personal devices, personal tablets that they use when they learn. So this leads me to another factoid, that language learning markets, that the online language learning market is going to be greatly increasing. It's projected to reach around 46.5 billion by 2032, which means there's going to be a greater market. There's going to be more software that offers online language learning courses. We'll see why this trend is important later on. So This is our basic synthesis. The strength of rural areas is that rural teaching offers great amounts of autonomy to teachers, which is something they prioritize a lot. This is something we can take advantage of when we're looking for hires for English teachers, and they also are able to form closer bonds with communities because they know students more personally, they know the community more personally. For weaknesses, we have the issue of funding shortage. As I previously stated, we get one teacher. Like, it's going to be around 720,000 NT per year. What are we going to do with that remaining money? It's quite scarce. So there's also the issue of housing and transportation for teachers, but we have some opportunities, which is collaborations with NGOs. There are certain organizations that we can work with that can make teaching English easier or recruiting teachers easier. And that there is, as I previously mentioned, a growing market for online language learning. But ultimately, the threats, these risks that any solutions might face, there's the high cost of digital devices, and then there's the issue of unqualified teachers, as per my previous slide. So what is my proposal? First, let's talk about collaborations. We have a couple of organizations to name. There's also the IIE, International Education's Teach for Taiwan. There's the Rotary Club of Taipei. There's a variety of NGOs that all rely on giving volunteer work to rural, remote areas in Taiwan, and there are ones that specifically train teachers. So what can we get from these collaborations? First, as I just mentioned, training for teachers. And these amounts of training do not have to be situated in large cities. We're able to have teachers to be trained in bilingual education, either remotely or in local areas, thanks to the help of the organizations. And they're also possible to offer volunteers to relieve workload. Because something like school administration work might not be something that requires as much skill, where it's perfectly possible for them to get local volunteers to help them to work on this aspect, so that teachers can spend more time planning their lessons, teaching their students. Second, digital education. So this benefit on this is threefold. First, it allows teachers to teach without a commute. If you're able to hire a teacher or get people who are interested in teaching but unable to move to your schools, you're able to bypass this issue by using online education. You can teach through online. And secondly, these devices, they don't necessarily have to be bought even though our funds are short. It's because there's the possibility for device donations, either from local communities or from larger companies like Taiwan Mobile, which has donated to quite a lot of partner schools before. And lastly, it allows for access to specialized online courses. As per the two objectives we have to fulfill, the first one, like primary education, that English lessons have to be taught in English, some other subject, and secondly, that qualified students need access to specialized courses because rural schools will not have access to as many teachers, not have access to as many resources. It is crucial that we allow students to have access to specialized courses such as Coursera that can give them certification, that can give them online lessons from truly qualified people from all over the world that they can access simply through a device. So what is the timeline we have for trying to implement these solutions? First, in the short term, let's say the first year, we have to start reaching out to these NGOs. We have to start reaching out to, let's say, Teach for Taiwan. We want to say, oh, can you help teachers for us? Or can you help send volunteers? We have to look for possible hires, and we want to specifically advertise teacher autonomy. Because what rural schools have uniquely over urban education areas is that teachers are allowed significantly more freedom in what they teach and how they teach. Next, you can seek out or community or NGO donations of digital devices, as I previously mentioned. There are organizations such as Coding for Fun or Taiwan Mobile that has donated devices before. Middle term, let's say year or 2, 3 years in, we want to begin our online language learning courses. There's plenty of options for this. There's Babbel, there's Duolingo as an app, there's online courses such as Khan Academy. Many of them have school plans that the school can subscribe to, but they're usually quite cheap. Next, training and retraining for teachers. In order to solve this qualification and certification problem that plagues rural Taiwan, we want teachers to be significantly more qualified through this online education and specifically trained locally. Next, familiarizing volunteers with administrative work to offset the workload. In the long term, what we're hoping to get is these fully taught English classes that are specifically taught in English and will taught by people significantly more qualified and professional. Next, we want to be reaching out to teachers for other subjects because the goal is we can perhaps teach chemistry, perhaps teach math in using the English language. And lastly, to provide specialist teachers for these courses. Thank you.
How many hours English course taught in elementary school in Taiwan?
How many hours?
Yes.
How many?
One of the real point is we should increase the teachers, right?
Yeah.
However, if I have a teacher and take them more, they can only do 4 hours per week. They have a lot, right? So I'm just curious, did teach exercise, how many hours they need to learn?
How many hours these students need to learn? We think that in the extreme cases of the most rural destinations that do not have as much access to these English teachers, it doesn't quite matter if the teacher can only teach 4 hours a week, so long as they're at least able to access this in the first place. Because it's perfectly possible for these children, if they have access to devices supplied by the school, they're more willing to learn on their own. As shown, there's data to prove that children have actively seeked out their personal education and independently search for their own learning. We think that at least exposing them to English in the school environment, even if it's just 4 hours a week, is something that can really make a difference.
So, sorry again. Here comes my second question. It's interesting because you mentioned about the device. My personal experience, but only me, I think all my friends are trying very hard to forbid their kids or children play the device home because usually kids will pick up or play online games. How do you make sure those in the countryside students won't bring their device home and do the same like the other kids?
Of course, there's that problem, distractions for these children when they're using these digital devices. There are two main ways you can pretty much solve this. First is by making it so that the majority of digital device use occurs in school, such as having iPads being shared, rotating between classes. Therefore, if the iPads are used within school, you ultimately have to follow the same school Wi-Fi regulations if there are any imposed, making so that students cannot access any unauthorized websites. On the second end, when the students bring these devices home to do their independent learning, we think it's ultimately very important for these schools to try to advise these parents to have some sort of oversight over these children, making sure that since these iPads still have to be brought to school at some point since they're borrowed from the school, that any unauthorized software such as games is not installed upon them, so that these are just many ways that we can check whether or not these students are actually learning properly and using these devices as they are told.
Still for you, you have the European program for the bilingual education. But how do you that the government give you the budget to allocate to improve the English learning? How do you allocate the budget?
We think the first priority of the budget is ultimately to hire a teacher. Like as I explained, you can only really get one, but it's still the physical teacher that is probably the best, most qualified for it. Everything else are pretty much compromises. So with keeping that in mind, I decided not to try to get a precise cost out of these because it's such as other costs such as digital devices, I was hoping to become significantly more reliant on like either device donations, and in the case where you do buy devices, there's no way to properly estimate how many are going to be donated, how many have to be bought. Secondly, for most of these language learning apps, for language learning courses or online courses, most of them are entirely free to use by students so long as they have internet. Things like Duolingo have a free version, things like Coursera, if you don't have to subscribe in order to access its teaching material. So we think in terms of budget allocation, mainly we're looking at trying to get them access to digital devices, perhaps improving internet accessibility within the school.
Okay.
Okay, come back to the next question on the devices. I think you use some source from the news agency, the United News Agency, something like that. So my suggestion is next time you need to cite some information, you can better go to the original one because the news agency also.
Yeah. They'll ultimately catalog all of it. In terms of sources, most of them are just
Oh, you should have some.
yeah.
Okay.
So for example, just a quick clarification, this is where I got the teacher salaries from. This is the main website I use to calculate the projections for online learning website. And this is just a comparison between rural and urban, why teachers choose to teach in certain instances. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, fellow contestants and judges. I'm going to talk about bilingual education in rural areas in Taiwan, and I'm contestant number 3. So first, I'm going to talk about the overview of the policy and current situation of bilingual education in Taiwan, and especially in the rural areas. And next, I'm going to talk about my proposals, and then cost-benefit analysis that includes quantitative analysis, the benefits and costs, and then last, the timeline and conclusions. So first, our society is now all globalized, and including our trade and economy. So English is becoming an essential language, and us, and including Taiwan. But you can see from the index, Taiwan compared to other Asian countries doesn't have such a great English skills. So we need to improve our English skills, and the government came up with the bilingual 2030 policy to reach this goal. And next, National Development Council and Youth Advisory Group came up with the bilingual 2030 policy, and the goals are to help Taiwan's workforce connect with the world and also attract international enterprises to Taiwan, and ultimately to enable Taiwanese industries to connect with the global markets and create high-quality jobs. And to gain these workers with English skills, we start with the elementary schools. And the goal is to have English classes conducted in all English, and also some other subjects such as math or other science subjects that's taught in English. And it's problem identification. In these indexes, we can see that in rural areas in the eastern side of Taiwan, the indexes are severely lower. That means the resource allocation is not distributed fairly, and the current challenges of rural areas is that they lack resources, including insufficient English fluent teachers, insufficient bilingual teaching materials, and also lack of school and teacher support, as we can see from the numbers. And okay, my first proposal is to enrichment of bilingual educational resources. First is teachers, software, and last is hardware. First, teachers, because some bilingual schools in Taiwan now have foreign teachers, but they are not that easy to get. So my goal is to train all of Taiwanese English teachers and make them have the ability to teach other subjects in English. And yes, and also increase bilingual teaching resources, because a lot of teachers now have a lot of pressure in teaching in English because that it's not their mother language, and they expertise in their subject but not in English. So we can give them even more materials, teaching materials in English, so they won't have such pressure on themselves, and they can focus on teaching with those subjects and not not having the materials made by themselves. And next is software. We're going to develop a bilingual learning application, and the students can access them with their personal computers or iPads. And of course, disadvantaged students will be some computers and iPads will be given to disadvantaged students, which the fund is from the $100 million, the $100 million that was given to us. And we are also going to guide them how to use the learning material usage. And back to the software. The software includes some gaming style, so the students will want to study and learn and gain points while the process. And the app is also integrated with local life, so when they use it, they won't think that it's just something that they won't use when they grow up and they start doing their job. They will think that it's around their life and it's something useful. So it will be easy to access bilingual learning and teaching for students and also teachers. And next is increase in support, because currently the teachers support bilingual teaching in Taiwan isn't so high, so we have to increase that. And the person who leads teachers is the principal, so we have to change the recruitment of principal. The principal needs to have passion in bilingual education, and also he or she needs to have sufficient knowledge in English-related education. And his duties or her duties include bilingual greetings to students, and also he can host various meetings in bilingual format. So the teachers and students will be more they will be more close to English, and also commend teachers and students for the frameworks of bilingual teaching and learning to enhance the teaching of the teachers. And also commend parents who implement bilingual communication in their families, so the students won't just the teacher won't just learn English in school, but also they can have connection with that at their homes. And last is software and hardware support. And teacher policies. You can avoid outstanding teachers as in bilingual teaching, and also for specific dedicated instructors for different subjects and higher salaries for those teachers that teach in bilingual. Next is quantitative analysis. Cost. Our fixed cost is 240K, including the software development, hardware, and the teacher salaries. And yearly cost includes 754K, and that includes the repairment of the hardware, software, and also the teacher salaries. And benefits includes we can improve the learning environment for the students and also the teacher qualities. So last, our development timeline. We're going to increase in resources and increase in school and teacher support. And in the first 2 years, it's the experimental stage. We're going to increase hardware resources, develop the software, and teacher training. And in the 3 last years, we're going to improve the learning of the students, including the principal selection and teacher and student committee policies. So thanks for listening. That's my presentation.
You say that the cost like this. Why you assume the bilingual policy is one Mandarin always one is English?
Because the policy that the government given is to enhance the English skills of the students. It did say it's English, and also because English is the main international language now spoken. So if we have to globalize, we need to increase our English skills.
I said to the second part of the first part of some policy, if you check the question carefully, I don't think that the task that they mentioned are English. For the background, they say yes. So this part I think I'm wondering why. But obviously, you can say the second part.
And also, most of the teachers that knows another language is English now in Taiwan. So it would be harder for them to learn like German, French, or others. And most people will learn English before they learn the third language.
If I go a little bit further, I will say, for example, the most Chinese common for Taiwan maybe Southeast
Yes.
Asia. And we do have a lot of, not maybe qualified teachers, but we do have a lot of resources that learn from this kind of language. For example, I think the most, Taiwan every year, we have
So we can see that here in the chart. They also speak fluent English, and if you learn English, your partners won't just be the Southeast Asian. It can also be the Americans and Europeans that also speak English, and it will not just be limited to the Southeast Asian countries. Like if you learn Indonesian, you're only going to be partners with Indonesia, and when you go to Malaysia, it won't work. The Indonesian won't work, so you still have to learn English.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a question about those. Also, you mentioned that providing iPads to students.
Yes.
Yeah, the other two groups also mentioned. But so when you provide iPads, do you want to check about the how students use iPads?
It's like mentioned, because the iPads can have the app limitations. Like now on the Apple iPads, you can limit the students to use some apps and not other apps. The English learning apps is what they can access, and also the previous said the Wi-Fi in the school can limit the websites that the students can access.
And about providing iPad actually during COVID-19, the government has a policy for
Yes, so-
every student has a pad, not necessarily iPads. Maybe
So-
Google from Google. So do you still is it still necessary to
Okay, so everyone has the iPad policy. Like in Taipei, even it's still not like it's not every person has one for themselves. It's everyone can have access to one when in school. So it's not everyone has one. It's when they go to classes they need an iPad, they can use it. And also in rural areas the distribution of the hardware isn't that equal. So the iPads here mentioned are the ones that they can bring home and use.
So can I, one more question about, actually it's extension of the.
Okay.
So we say that we communicate service. So we communicate with English and people in any nations. But why is it still the English most important? If I'm doing the business in Indonesia, why should I not learn their language?
Because like if you're a shoe factory and you have factories in Indonesia, in Malaysia, Vietnam, the major language is still English. But if you want to be more friendly, you can learn a little of the other language. But the English is still the major language that you need to know. So and this is in elementary school, so we have to have the basic skills of English. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm number 92, and today I'll be talking about how to achieve the rural school bilingual 2030 program with interactive online learning program. And this is a brief overview of what I'm gonna talk about. First, the overview of the bilingual 2030 program, then the Taiwan rural education current condition and the two challenges in this program. Then onto the proposal is the interactive online learning program. Then onto the cost benefit, the cost breakdown benefit, and lastly the conclusion. So the Bilingual 2030 program is a program that aims to have all English class conducted fully in English and have some subjects conducted partially in English. And also to have some bilingual experimental courses for the qualified students, for those who are more experts in speaking English. And in Taiwan's rural education is a problem that hinders the development of this program. As you can see that there's education disparity between urban and rural schools, causing the educational resources for English teachers and English education to be very unfair between urban and rural schools. And the two challenges include the teacher side and student side. For the teacher side, because teachers are concentrated in urban areas, which is caused by some major concerns such as difficulties in transportation to the rural areas and also the lack of opportunities and development for teachers who teach in rural areas. So these lead to insufficient English educational resources in rural schools. And on to the student sides, students in rural area often face a lack of financial resources to engage in proficient English education, and also they usually have a lack of contact with the real English speakers, which lead to first the lack of English learning opportunities, and second, the most natural root of this problem is the lack of English basis for learning English, which will hinder the development of the Bilingual 2030 program. So in order to combat the two challenges, I came up with the proposal of the interactive digital learning platform. It is a complicated program that involves a multifaceted dimensions. So first, it consists of a trifold learning system. So first is the online learning classroom, which connects students in rural area with the English teachers in urban areas. So this resolves the problem that the teachers in urban areas often don't want to go to rural areas for the transportation concerns. So we are not bringing them in because bringing them in some will still refuse to come into the rural areas due to transportation problems. So we are just using internet to resolve this issue. And second is the interactive English review packet that helps students to strengthen their English bases while combating the problems about distractions while using online learning platform. Because students often use like iPads or pads to play games. So rather than just preventing them from doing so, we are integrating learning with games to encourage students to learn English. And last dimension is the English Chinese online textbooks that allow students to gain specific knowledge, for example, science, social studies, math, for both languages. So this will consist of like a translated version for the textbook. So it will achieve the goal that some subjects will be conducted in English, while also achieving a goal that all English courses will be done completely by English. And also, this plan will also consist of an elite program and a sister school partnership. So for the elite program, it will involve qualified students and professional students who are proficient in English. So it will allow them to connect with English teachers from abroad with also internet and digital devices, and to learn with abroad students. And as per that, we have the online sister school program, which will establish partnership with US and Singapore schools, elementary schools. And to the most important part is to encourage students to really communicate with the true language speakers, to encourage them to really use what they learn in classroom, not just to keep them in mind. And the intended outcome of this interactive digital learning program, first, the teacher side, it'll increase the availability of program and encourage teachers in urban areas to also teach students in a rural area English, while preventing the transportation issues and opportunity issues that I had discussed beforehand. And on the student side, first, the digital device will help them to lower their financial burden of learning English, increase their use of English in more subjects. As I mentioned, the English Chinese online textbooks will help doing so, and to increase their connectivity with English speakers and encourage their proficiency in English. And these will help enhance rural English proficiency while provide personalized English learning for the rural area students. But what are the opportunities and target audience of this proposal? First, let's come to the opportunities. According to the Ministry of Digital Affairs, the 4G coverage in Taiwan rural area is an incredible number of 97%, 5G coverage 95%. So it means very vast internet coverage in rural areas, and thus leading to easy access to internet and ease in implementation of this digital program. And it will also make it easier to connect with urban and international teachers. And the advantages is that the online learning will prevent concerns transportation, provide more convenient choices, and keep track of learning progress, because digital learning will help keep all the learning progress in the cloud. Yeah. And for the LEAD program, it will provide tailored learning experience for students who are proficient and provide different levels of English learning for students with different levels. So it'll increase the efficiency of English learning for rural area students. And also the sister school relationship will help expand student vision from just confined in Taiwan to the more broader international communities and schools, and help them to connect with international teachers and students. And finally, the target is divided among 4 tiers. The first tier is the most important tier that we are targeting, the Pingtung, Tainan, Tainan, as they have the most remote schools. And the second tier, Miaoli, Hualien, Chiayi, and New Taipei City. And the third tier is the counties that are not included in the 6 capitals of Taiwan, and also the Keelung and Hsinchu. And the fourth tier is the final. It includes the 6 capitals, Keelung and Hsinchu. So that's basically all the rural schools in Taiwan. Okay, then the cost benefit. The cost of this program will include, first, fixed cost is the hardware setup for schools to accommodate the programs, and also the software accommodation. And for the variable cost, the system maintenance and online tutoring fees, and also the fees for connecting with other schools. And one thing to note is this is just a general cost estimation, and all costs are subject to any changes that are different for every school about their class sizes or resources. And the cost benefit estimated total cost about 550,000 plus 100,000 per year, and benefits high quality of education for rural students, greater availability of teachers, and also lower costs for rural students to learn English. So our goal consists of 4 stages. First is to establish the tribal learning system, then to establish the elite learning program for students with English proficiency, next to establish sister school relationships, and finally, in 2030, we'll be able to achieve the bilingual 2030 goals. And so, by establishing and promoting the interactive digital learning program, Taiwan's rural schools will be able to lower cost for English learning for students, encourage students to communicate, and make teachers more available. Thank you.
This is supposed to be biological program and sister school relationship. It's very efficiency to have the student learn more English. Please learn more about your conclusion about the future to put your goal more specific.
You mean which
Yeah.
the goals?
I think I want to know more about your goal to put, because your picture is quite good, but you want how to make your goal more efficiency to apply to the.
Okay, so thanks for the question. So the logic behind the design of the goals. So first, we established the tribal learning system to provide the basic of English learning to all the rural students. Then, so for next, we provide also the qualified students. So the reason I put the sister school relationship like behind the 2 goals is because before you put students into contact with international students, you should make sure that they first have the basis of speaking English before they can really communicate with the international scholars, international teachers, and also the students. So that's the reason behind the logic I designed this series of stages. So first, to ensure that they really have the basis of communicating in English, then we will allow some chances for exchanges between Taiwanese rural students and the students from abroad. Yeah.
2 questions. One, you mentioned about the 2030, the Taiwanese policy formulation, and have you checked how standard it is? How do you judge someone's English good or not good?
So currently, I didn't check for. I didn't really check on like very specific details about how they examine your English proficiency because of the time limit. Sorry, but there are some examination programs in Taiwan that will help examine a person's English proficiency. So in Taiwan, we have our own set of tests that test students. It's a very national-based test, and everyone can have access to it. It tests students listening, reading, writing, and speaking about English. And the scores are really very high credible, very recognized among the universities in Taiwan. So we can use these tests to test about the students' proficiency. And also through the daily contacts with the teachers can also provide some supplementary information about the students' English ability, including speaking, listening, writing, and reading.
My question is, you mentioned about, I think, the online English classroom, right? And how do the service, this kind of service come from? Do you have anything in your mind, like a private section, like to the ABC, or a public section?
So, wait, sorry, can you ask the question again?
The question is, you say you probably want to introduce the online English classroom, right? But this kind of online service must be provided by someone, some English teacher or something like that. So we do have some private section like this thing, like Tutor ABC, like this one. We also, or in your mind, it should be like done by the government, like Minister of Education, right?
Okay, so I think there are actually 2 answers for this. Since the costs are provided by the government to support the English learning education for students. So the first, some major parts of the online tutoring should be like provided and funded by the government. But however, in order to reduce cost, the schools can have the options to collaborate with the NGOs such as Tutor ABC, as you mentioned, to increase the efficiency because like platforms such as Tutor ABC are really well recognized platforms in Taiwan for English learning.
This is an interesting proposal, and you did make a point that it might be effective, but it's super but I just want to make sure. So does the supply for English teachers from urban schools or from some private institutions?
So like their supplies.
The supply for English teachers.
Yeah. So in order to make sure the supply that English teacher is really sufficient for implementing this program. So first, I think it's very important for government to do a first stage check in the English teacher sources, and I believe that the teacher resources in Taiwan is very sufficient. As you can see from this graph, the red dots here are the qualified teachers, and they just are willing to come to Taiwan. So yeah, the teachers will be like sufficient. The resources will be sufficient. Yeah, thank you.
Testing. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm contestant 5. Today I will be talking about enhancing bilingual education in rural areas. So the 4 sections I will be going through is analyzing the position, finding potential challenges, finding synthesis, and then finally offering suggestions. By the end of this presentation, I hope to prove to you why rural education is severely lacking and what we can do to help. So firstly, we need to look at the position, the current state of education in rural Taiwan. Firstly, in the terms of bilingual, we can see that over 70% of Taiwanese speakers cannot speak some level of English. In fact, this is so bad that in the Taiwan English Proficiency Index, we are rated, sorry, the resolution is not very good, but we're rated 48. We can assume that this effect is even worse in rural Taiwan, where education is severely lacking. For example, in 2019 to 2020, there are 99,000 students in rural schools who were in need of better education. So to properly find a solution to this issue, we need to look at the target demographic. We know that we need to target students, but the issue is what type of students. So looking at the key demographic, we can see that the impact of socioeconomic status, or SES, has already been formed by grade 7. This is severely important for rural citizens, which generally have lower incomes than their urban counterparts. So as you can see here, socioeconomic status of grade 7 and 8 was associated with their English learning performance. So in addition, we have to keep in mind that unprivileged students in rural areas do not have access to some sort of electronic device. As you can see, almost 78% have no internet connection. So in my opinion, it's very naive to just offer them tablets or offer them online courses and expect them to be able to have the connection or the technological access to attend those courses properly. So one of the potential challenges and any solution will be the lack of finances for children's education. As you can see, due to many younger citizens moving out of rural areas due to urbanization, the number of Taiwanese farmers, which is the main source of income, has decreased from over 1 million in 2016 to 500,000 in recent years, and this is in 2023. In addition, 13.3% of Taiwan rural families have an unstable income, and as you can see here, the per capita income is far lower than their urban counterparts. This leads to many issues, one being that the difference in teacher resources. Rural areas have lower pay. For example, rural schools in Qingyi had 20 job openings, but they could only recruit 7 new teachers. In addition, they have a severe lack of access to materials. As you can see, 55% did not have a personal desk, and 60% had fewer than 10 extracurricular books. In addition, a less obvious but equally as damaging problem is the difficulty in traveling to school. With the low population density, having 96% of the land area, but only 30% of the population, the poor infrastructure such as dangerous roads, and the remoteness of public schools, this leads to many children not being able to travel to these schools on their own, needing their parents to accompany them, which takes up time in travel, which their parents could use for work. In addition, many safety concerns. So, a good solution will have to target young students under grade 7, probably less than that, to have time to develop their skills, need to account for low technological availability, low incomes, and large distance and dangerous roads. So what is the solution to this problem? My solution is mobile training units. So mobile training units are basically these vans that are equipped with many education materials such as books, VR, iPads. The rationale for this solution is that it can help with limited mobility by these vans being able to go to certain places and go to the houses of these students. It also helps with low digital ability by providing them internet connection and devices, and it is a very low cost solution because it helps pull together all the cost into one van that can supply far more households than just a singular school. An example of this is India's, which trained over 10 million people in rural areas using these types of mobile units. So these vans will visit 1 to 2 locations a day every week where citizens can visit and get weekly guides of English literacy. Every week, these training units will come back and they'll have 4-hour sessions where they can check these students' process, provide them more materials, and give them guidance. In the short term, this gives easy access to English and other languages, pooling resources to encourage employment of teachers, and give parents more time to work. The longer-term solution is better bilingual population, incentive to stay in rural areas, and more global competitiveness. Here's a very small risk assessment based on India's current example. So, sorry, the visuals aren't very good. In terms of likelihood, there's sanitary concerns and traffic or lateness of the buses. To mitigate these issues for traffic and late deployment, we can have a signifier or a identifier. For example, those bus stop signs will show you when it will arrive. And sanitary concerns, just the continuous supply of sanitary products. In terms of more severe issues, such as the breaking of devices, we need to ensure proper guardrails, such as foam or protective materials over the VR headsets, and proper punishment, such as a ban from the service. Finally, students may not choose to go to these training programs. I put this as the most severe because obviously our intention is for students to come and learn. The method of mitigation would be review of course curriculum, review of teachers, and advertising materials, which will be calculated in the costs. So here is a very small timeline of how we would roll this project out, broken into phase 1, short term, and phase 2, long term. In the short term, we have to acquire materials, announce it and advertise, inspect it, and then official outroll, which is the testing phase. In phase 2, we will expand after the development of new courses and seeing if students are properly engaged and the return rate, and the expansion, move more vans, and then we can develop more courses, not just bilingual English courses, other languages, or even science or technology. So there's small cost-benefit analysis, the marketing cost of keeping it running, and the cost of technological equipment. Okay, thank you.
But on the behalf of you, fellow contestants, I must ask. Actually, I think data from different sources say the internet coverage is very high in Taiwan. Digital island, we are not so bad in the urban or the countryside. So how do you defend?
Well, obviously that is a very brilliant question. In terms of technological and internet connection in rural areas, Taiwan is actually more higher than other countries that are less economically developed. However, this 38% is still similarly worrying. If other countries have 50% of the population that doesn't have this internet access, our 38% is still very concerning in terms of providing an equitable service to everyone.
Then, like, probably you also see the other people show the 98% of the 4G or post generation. But the difference is, I'm not asking the technical progress, because I mean, depends on the data. Or completely reference you are.
I'm not going to say your data is a lie, but in terms of the 4G, 5G, I believe that they do not account specifically rural areas. I believe that the research is done in more urban areas. Because obviously, 90% 4G seems a little bit suspicious to me.
We know that rural students have the financial problem to learn more English. That's the reason the government wants to give a budget to the student to learn English. Could you explain more about your budget allocation to improve the bilingual education? Yeah.
Do you mean to break this down? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of technological equipment, I calculated by looking at this website, which gave the average cost of an iPad and a VR headset from Meta, which is how we got that cost of technological equipment. That counts as the fixed cost. In terms of marketing, this is a very variable calculation method, as depending on the interaction of students, we can increase and decrease it however we want. In terms of cost of running, we calculated the cost of gas and the internet cost using a VAT site, which calculates the average cost of living in Taiwan by breakdown. This is the cost of producing one van and sending it for 1 year, which is 300,000. So we could send about 3 vans per year.
So I just have a quick question. This is a very interesting proposal, but I just wonder, because English classes are conducted weekly,
Yes.
and is your proposal really sustainable for so many classes and weekly classes?
Well, of course, our course relies on student participation. We will give them the tools necessary to be able to learn on their own and to be able to sustain their own education. Ultimately, it is up to them whether they can continue this, because 4-hour classes every week it's not that big of a cost on the government side. Most of the, we're just here to help the students learn.
Just a quick reminder, I think you have a very good nice data, but if you can, every data, the resource is the key. Because some information, I think, then it makes the data much more reliable. It's just the reminder, it's not even a question, just remind like that. Thank you.
Test. So, good afternoon, honorable judges and fellow contestants. I am number 39, and today I'll be taking a brief guide on how I'm going to achieve bilingual prosperity in rural education. Now, Just for an overview on how I'm going to conduct this proposal, it is essential for us to look at how exactly is the background and the envision of this bilingual education policy of 2030 and its current state and symptoms of the current bilingual policy, as well as the woes of the rural bilingual education that they are facing right now. So in 2018, the National Development Council has envisioned that this policy is required because as Taiwan becomes a significant position of an Asian economic node, it is essential that it requires certain people that can better conduct international communication, and also they could attract successful international interest in Taiwan. Additionally, what aspect of English are they focusing on? Well, CBRE, an organization that the government has been collaborating with, has conducted research on the English proficiency on the Taiwanese students. And we can see that in these 4 aspects, listening, writing, speaking, and also reading, we are seeing that although Taiwanese students are excelling in reading and listening skills, however, their composition skills and their speaking skills are relatively lacking. And therefore, one of their major policy goals is that they emphasize on the productive skills of English, the capability to speak and write. And how exactly is it going to conform to our proposal will be mentioned later on. Now, moving on to the current symptoms and how it exactly is enforced. As of 2024, about 60% of Taiwanese high schools are incorporated with English as a means of instruction. This means that about 60% of Taiwanese high schools are currently conducting classes with 100% English language as a means to teach. Now, additionally, schools in Taiwan has about a proportion of 1 to 12. 1 out of 12 schools in Taiwan have an international collaboration with other schools from other countries, and the government expects that by 2030 they are achieving a proportion of 1 to 3. Additionally, digitalization and subsidizing undergraduates to enhance rural progress has been introduced to better enforce the rural bilingual education. However, are rural students actually enjoying this benefit? No, they are not. If we look at the woes of rural bilingual education, there are certain problems that need to be dealt with. First of all, the student ability difference is extremely concerning. The gap between urban and rural students are extremely large, and therefore this also leads to another concern that they are lacking in experience and also motivation to learn English. Additionally, they have an insufficient learning environments. Not only are they lacking of resources and opportunities for utilizing English into their lives, they are also lacking faculty to teach English, and they also lack an opportunity to use English in certain aspects of life. So, how are we going to solve this? Well, looking at how we're going to overcome challenges and identified as demotivation and ability gap and construction for an ideal environment. For the ability gap and demotivation, we're gonna make students more interested and provide a more friendly environment for them to learn English. And for constructing an ideal environment, we're not only gonna minimize resource and educational access inequality, but we're also gonna reach beyond class. We're gonna reach into the life aspects, the normal lives that they could utilize English into their lives. And therefore, this solution is going to be digital-based, not only going to be digital-based, but also provide offline and entertaining opportunity into their education. So, for a short-form proposal, we're going to stabilize student interest and their ability and provide a stability of confidence for their English speaking skills and composition skills. First of all, we're looking at CLIL model. Basically, we're going to move from EMI model to content and language integration learning. How's this going to work? Basically, CLIL model incorporates 2 languages, not only just English, but Mandarin into the education system. Why is that? Because the rural students are essentially lacking in experience to utilize English. It is relatively unrealistic to just teach English through English because they do not have the preliminary skills to understand these words or vocabulary or grammar. So by incorporating Mandarin as a complementarity is more effective to enhance this education. Additionally, we're gonna promote engagement in classes through games, audio, etc., to different means. Essentially, we're gonna provide entertaining content for these students, for them to engage more in our classes, and therefore, we could expect faculty to efficiently integrate not only just English skills and English and board games and self-created audios into their classes. Now, from the aforementioned information that I've talked about, we're gonna reach beyond classes. Reaching beyond classes is essentially self-explanatory. First of all, we're gonna look at how we're gonna incorporate learning events during breaks or after class into their education system. We're gonna organize events such as, for example, English singing competitions or drama competitions, or even just a simple vendor machine with English that they could interact with. And therefore, this offers an engaging experience with an incentive, such as a reward or a certificate of progress or achievement. Additionally, we're gonna revamp the environment. Basically, when learning English, starting from their environment and lives is extremely important because this is rather like an instinctive learning. The reassigning English signs and broadcasting English audio during breaks and increase student exposure to English opportunities is rather better for these students. Now, in the long run, we're going to provide a collaborative experience with other schools and provide a better opportunity for high school students and elementary school students to study English together and provide an engaging experience with different age groups. Now, the timeline. In the short term, we're going to focus on the English learning opportunities and events, and also focus on collaborative events and incorporation, and also revamps. And in 4 to 5 years, we're going to focus on fully operate collaborative courses and EMI possible future EMI adoption for better bilingual education. Now, for a quantitative analysis, it's shown as the following. This is shown in the long term and the short run structure. And in conclusion, we're going to wishing the futures of Taiwan can all achieve English proficiency and also shine bright on the international stage. Thank you.
You mentioned about EMI, English as a medium of instruction.
Yes.
So you say about like 100% progress in English.
Yeah.
Okay. For your information, it's not because the article was EMI suggestion the Minister of Education is like 70%. So let's bring another issue because later you might hope I forget the name. You say that you can use Mandarin to help assistant teaching learning yeah, CLIL. I think that they probably is saying that's the language is 30% they already do that. So one thing and so this if you want to defend yourself, you can say that.
Okay, so although as you mentioned, like EMI probably has like a majority of English, but also there are some leeway for Mandarin to exist. Why incorporate this CLIL model is that in elementary education, although the exact usage, although as you say, EMI might also be suitable for this situation, but we must consider that for elementary students, they do not have this kind of preliminary knowledge or basic vocabulary, grammatical structure of these of English sentences. I think it is better to incorporate CLIL model into this situation because you're not exactly making the English the dominant language in class. You're allowing the simultaneous existence of Mandarin and English to exist at the same time and help students to better understand the English language. And that's why I think that maybe there is a certain misunderstanding of information from the 100% in EMI, but I think COIL is a better model.
Yeah, and another way that you made the English more interactive. Yeah, this is good.
Thank you.
Because the urban student, they don't have the environment for English.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, could you provide more about your opinion about how to find more those teachers and the way to give the incentive to the teacher to the team to have the active way with those urban students?
Okay, so in response to your question to search for proper faculty, essentially I didn't have time to go over the quantitative analysis as well. Essentially, we're gonna provide certain budgets because our budget is $1 million in NTZ. For the new model faculties, we're gonna provide about 300,000 NT dollars into this revamp because we want teachers not only to better incorporate into this new model of teaching, like I mentioned, the COIL model of teaching. We're also ensuring the quality of these faculty, the quality of education provided by these faculty, and essentially by learning events and also the environmental revamp, we can also provide more engaging experiences for faculties to teach English because they are not only limited to books or courses that are given to them. They could teach beyond that. They could combine English with, for example, break times or even just the school environment. And this is providing more freedom of teaching essentially. And I think that's an incentive.
My question is about the COIL.
Yeah.
So although COIL puts English content and provides any content some interactive elements, it also increase the difficulty to teach, and it might also increase the students' difficulty to learn the material. What's your
Okay, so COIL model might increase the difficulty for the students to learn English because it is not essentially conducted in like a full English environment. But what is important about this is that they are trying to get a preliminary knowledge because this is for elementary schools, so that by providing a more stable basis on English, they could better learn English in more advanced environments later on, such as in junior high schools or high schools. So I think COIL model it's better to help them to advance further into the English education. Thank you.
好，谢谢大家在上半场的聆听与专注。那我们接下来将休息10分钟，现在的时间是下午1点58分。那我们在就为了掌控时间，我们在2点05分的时候回到现场。谢谢。
敢说你要被主持
我讲到第一个 proposal 说已经7分钟了。我们有一大堆东西要讲，根本讲不到。
超强，
哪有？我死定了！我跟你讲，我晚上回去，我要陪3个人听。
你要看完了。
我从80几页现在看到260页，看了180多页。
时间呢？
啊。
那你等一下回家吗？
应该吧，然后还要去吃东西。
啊？
不知道他们待会会做什么。
谁？
再买给他们啊。
啊？
I don't know, maybe 他们还要去吃晚餐，maybe。
我应该要把这个声音关掉。
没有关到，
你们那个下半
不是你都好无聊。
Bilingual education is something that's really integrated into our life in an urban setting. Yet, in rural schools, they may have some problems reaching bilingual 2030. And so I am contestant number 7, and today I'm going to tell you how we could help rural schools reach bilingual 2030 with fun and leveled classes. So this is the agenda for today. First, we will go over an overview of the current situation and the policies of bilingual 2030, and then the proposal I proposed, and then the quantitative analysis of the proposal and the conclusion. So an overview of bilingual 2030. First, we should know that who we are representing. First, so we are representing the National Development Council Youth Advisory Group, which means that we should focus on career coaching, public engagement, and experimental learning. So what we should do is that we should provide viable policies for better youth development. So we are basically giving the idea and the roadmap for the developments and letting the schools use it. And then the goals of the policy of bilingual 2030 is that we are trying to making all schools conduct English classes fully in English, and then run some experimental courses for qualified individuals. And then we want to make Taiwan more internalized with English learning. Yet, in rural area schools, there are multiple challenges that is stopping them from reaching these goals. The challenge one is the lack of incentive to learn English, which is a basis problem for this policy. So the current situation is that children may not be comfortable in using English, so they don't use it. Yet what this brings is that they don't have any improvements in English, which is a very negative cycle that's happening right now. And also at home, they use Chinese. At school, they mostly use Chinese outside of English classes. And then even if we employ really good English teachers, if they have the incentive, if they don't have the incentive to learn, they learn nothing. So one opportunity that shows is that we have to understand what children's like. They like fun. So what they do in their class, in their recess or breaks, they do chill coaching games, which is running around and screaming very loudly, and playing house, which is something like role playing. And this has shown positive to their problem solving, creativity, and social abilities. So what opportunity here is that we could integrate these learnings, integrate learning with these games. And so the first proposal is English fun. The first one is a upgraded playing house in English class, which is where we create a different classroom with real life situations where children and students can learn about the daily conversations that is used. For example, we could use supermarket, restaurant, or at home setting, where we could introduce daily conversations and different vocabularies. And as for integrating this other games could include like Simon Says musical chairs or Freeze Pictionary into English classes to make it more fun. And in addition, we could also introduce English into PE classes. For example, we could play running games like Monkey in the Middle, Shark in the Middle. And for these games, we could limit them to use English while playing, which is basically learning English while having fun. As for a second challenge that schools may meet is that they have a lack of English-based education. So in a research, it shows that 70% of rural schools, elementary students fall behind the English syllabus, and that of about 30 vocabularies. So if we are changing like the current English curriculum to only English classes, they may not be able to completely be comfortable using English only in these classes. So what we need to do is gap the English proficiency. And so the proposal that I'm giving right now is that we should separate students into different levels. So it will be only 2 or 3 classes per grade, and that there will be first a English ability test given to all students to test their ability of English and separate them into different levels of classes. So the teaching materials will also be based on ability. So the 3 levels that we will be distinguishing is level 1, level 2, and level 3. So level 1 is for the students that fall behind on English and their goals is to catch up with other individuals. And for level 2 is for the average level students in English and their class goal is to stay on syllabus. As for level 3, it's the advanced students and that we could start giving bilingual experimental courses with. So with this diversion of levels, we could help the more disadvantaged individuals to help them increase their English abilities while giving more opportunities to the better individuals. And so for level 1, we would use Taiwanese teachers with a few online English platforms to help them learn English at a faster speed. Also, they could use their free time to learn on the online English platforms and catch up with others. As for level 2 and level 3, we can start the integration of foreign teachers into these classes. Well, there might also be a risk that it might discourage lower levels from learning. So this is where I'm proposing that only a few classes would be separated into smaller classes by levels, and while other classes still where all students still learn together. This is the quantitative analysis. For level classes, I foresee a cost of foreign teacher and 2 Taiwanese teachers. For foreign classes, we should have a plain house classroom setup, and the total cost would be about 97K NTD per year. And please ignore that because this only foresees a teacher cost for 1. As for the timeline to phase 1, which is in 2025, we'll start taking the English ability test and looking for teachers and set up the classroom. As for phase 2, which is 2026 to 2028, we will conduct level classes and see the students' feedback and change anything if we want, and start integrating the English fund proposal into classes. As for phase 3, which is 2029 to 2030, we will plan to level out all students' English ability and introduce all English class into our schools. Thank you. I believe a 1 million budget is a lot and very abundant. Since that my proposal does not need that much of a cost and only holds cost for the new teachers that will be employed during the time of the proposal. I believe that what the problem that we are focusing on is different, since what I am focusing on is the basis of English learning, which is only the incentive to learn. Yet they are focusing more on the learning materials and different aspects of the problem that may not be only about the base.
The teacher's shortage is actually challenging for everyone to learn English. And you define the student with different language. Do you think it's possible for them to define different language to learn English? Because the teacher is not enough.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I do think that it might be a problem, but since we have a so large budget with only one proposal costing more money, we could allocate more budget into finding teachers and maybe increase their wages for them to teach in rural settings.
Yeah, so you, because the test requires elementary schools, in elementary schools, English classes are conducted fully in English. Some subjects are introduced to private teaching. So is are the level classes for those subjects introduced with bilingual teaching? Or I'm not very sure about the level classes. So the level classes are specific to some subjects.
For now, I think in this time period, I believe that it's more suitable to just fit the level classes into English classes, specifically since there's already a teacher shortage. So moving the level classes into other subjects might also increase the teacher cost.
Yeah, but I have this question because the goal is also the government also has a goal that some subjects are having.
Yes, that is also included in my proposal where I think that PE classes could also introduce English games, and like they could conduct it in all English environment.
I like the idea of next student interested in the English. Consider if you have a meeting with some officers from the Ministry of Education, you just say, yes, that's a good proposal, but we want to 50% kids after like 3 years learning, they not pass some English test. How do you convince them you
For these games, these are only integrated into a few of the classes, which is like maybe once or twice per month, while other classes still focuses on the academic syllabus that the school provides.
they are more intent to start in the drama?
Yes, I do believe.
Hello, dear judges and fellow contestant. I'm contestant number 69. And in the increasing globalized world we live in today, English is an essential skill that allows students to gain competitive advantage in the world we live in today, especially for rural students who are presented with less opportunity and less resources. And I believe with the multi-aspect policy I provide, it can strengthen the English ability of these rural area students. So the current English ability ranking, Taiwan ranks similarly throughout the years, with it ranking about number 30 in the presented countries. But there's a significant issues where, as can see from the graph, major cities in Taiwan hold the majority of the bilingual schools and thus hold the majority of the bilingual resources, while rural areas lack the opportunities and resources. And this problem can be shown through with first rural area face like a different kinds of issues with relating to bilingual compared to a city school. With first the incorporation issues with resources. So these rural area students lack English ability initially, and this will lead to resentment towards learning as they don't have the capability of speaking English. And also with after school program, rural areas only have 41% of the students going to after school programs compared to 73% in cities. That doesn't even include the private schools, which means that these rural area students lack the opportunities and resources for that are presented within these after school programs. And also for usefulness, English have like a low usage within daily life for rural area students, which means that they will have less practice, resulting in less impact for speaking English. And also Chinese and other dialects are more useful in communication for them. And thus, so in order to increase their English ability, it's important to increase incorporation of English within their lives. And for the teachers' issues, so compared to a city school, that can typically be filled in like one or two rounds of like a selection process of employment, rural areas requires 3 rounds, and this resulted in less qualified teachers. And also with many teachers viewing it as just simply as a like stepping stone, and in terms of going to rural area schools and the hiring of substitute, this leads to an instability in learning styles for the rural area students. And the reason why teachers aren't choosing rural areas is because of the lack of resources and facilities, limited professional development opportunities, and potential isolation from colleagues and support networks, and also challenges with transportation. But these are all long-term issues that's hard to solve within the 5 years short range that are given, but we can still mitigate the impact of the lack of teachers. So with my solution, the goal will be to increase incorporation of English into students' daily lives and decrease the impact of the lack of educational resources. And for the students, firstly, we aim for like the science and broadcasting all turning into English, with switching out all the different science that are presented currently in the school into English, and into having English and Chinese on them, and also the broadcast through speakers are spoken in both languages, and these can increase the familiarity of students for English. And also encouragement. This is addressing the resentment issues where we are still teaching them basic vocabs and basic grammars, but we are going to encourage the speaking of English during class, and to less fixated on the grammar issues that may appear due to the lower age group. And this can increase the willingness first for them to speak English. And for the parents, which they're very essential in providing a familiar environment, an English familiar environment for students outside of schools. So we are going to provide a program for parents, and where they can come and learn English for free within the schools at 1 time per week. And this can help parents gain interest and to further help them to encourage students to learn English and be more familiar with the language outside of schools and in home. And for the schools and teachers issues, I've prepared like an online platforms. We can collaborate with online platforms where we can utilize the current available online platform, with me specifically mentioning the Khan Academy, which is a completely free website that allows students to have access to high quality English resources. And these resources goes along with the current rural digital empowerment promotion project that are utilized by the government, that are supported by the government, which kind of correspond with the issues digital issues that may occur. And also for outside of schools, we encourage students to study online using the platforms that we prepared. But also we can provide paper copies for those who lack the physical digital resources they have. And future collaboration, we can communicate with platforms such as Junyi, to provide a more specialized course that can be directed to the elementary schools. And for the government jobs within the online platforms, they will be responsible for monitoring the impact of these platforms and of these changing of signs. And we will have non-scheduled visit of 2 times per school year to monitor the adoption of these policies. And also we will test the impact of these policies with us using different platforms such as Duolingo to help test the impact of these policies, and help differentiate the different levels of students to further help with the bilingual program that may be adopted in the future. And the government will also sponsor all parts of these policies to ensure no additional burden on the schools. And for the timeline, for the first year, we'll be in phase 1 of like starting the incorporation with us switching out some major signs in schools, and also set up the parental program and start promoting and employing Khan Academy in some subjects. And for 2 to 3 years, we'll be expanding, which will switch out at least 50% of the signs in the school and have at least a small number of participants within the parental program, and to incorporate English online programs within major subjects in the school. And for 4 to 5 years, we'll have full integration, which will switch out all the signs and have full broadcast in English and Chinese, and have the parental program running smoothly with high participation rate from the parents, and have more specialized courses, just as I mentioned. The short-term impact will be to increase the familiarity and the willingness to learn English, and to mitigate the impact of the lack of educational resources. While the long-term impact will be to provide a strong basis for the schools to have future English incorporation, or even like employing bilingual programs. So my cost distribution adds up to about 900,000 per year, and the reason why I have 100,000 prepared is for other risks or other potential issues that may appear for the schools. And some major risks, including low participation rate and the lack of physical device, can still be solved by different aspects of my proposal, with the program being completely free, and also provide the parents with some basic English knowledge, and us providing paper copies and work along with the current government policies. Thus, the incorporation of this multi-aspect policy help increase students' familiarity and mitigate the impact of lacking resources, which strengthen the English ability of rural students. Thank you.
Can you show the slide also? I think there is a trade-off problem, because on the one side you say you can encourage students to speak English, okay, on the other hand, I think the problem the English teachers do their job to make sure students can speak English.
So first, thank you for your question. I think encouragement is very important in terms of specifically we're working with like this elementary school students, and just I mentioned in my problem analysis, one major issues that this rural area schools have is that they resent learning English, and they resent speaking English. So we're still going to teach them basic English with like the vocabs and grammars that these rural schools are currently already teaching, but we're going to like incentivize them and kind of have like positive comments on them speaking English, to at least help them get over this resentment and make them willing to at least speak English and learn English. And this can help with future usage, as they can learn more grammars and learn more vocabs and expand their English ability. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Also, analyze you have some calculations, and you have the second slide with the data support.
Oh.
Just suggestions.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, so my question is, well, now the government provides $1 million.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, you did spend more.
Oh.
So you didn't spend all the money as well.
Oh yeah. Because just I mentioned before, like there may be future issues, or maybe we so I've already overestimated some of my costs, but we may still incur other costs during the employment of these policies. So we're preparing like 100,000 for these potential issues that may occur, to allow the school and the government to prepare for it, and to not like surpass the budget we're given.
And I will meet the way that you build the industry environment step by step. But my question is about what do you spend more about your budget on Yeah, is that too much?
Oh yeah. Thank you for your question, but I think these like there are varying size of different schools, and I'm preparing more money for the science because some schools may be like larger in comparison to other schools. So and plus we're like translating and transitioning basically taking out all the original science and adding English titles and adding English commentary on the science, which I think for schools that may be like, for example, larger, this cost will be like rather reasonable and will be a reasonable number throughout the years. So I think for these smaller schools, it will be less compared to larger school because they're smaller in size and there are less science. So yeah. Thank you for your questions.
Just a quick comment. Sorry about that. So, I would suggest you for the slide, another point is it actually is like an economic scale. That means one elementary school spend the money, but the other elementary could just copy the science. You don't have to, every elementary will develop their own science, right?
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, I think that can be helpful for future usage, but for this proposal, we're just focusing on one of the elementary and we're like basically starting this transition. Yep. Thank you.
Hello, contestants. My contestant number is 88, and today I'll be creating a bilingual future starting from rural schools. So first, if you're a privileged student, you have a 6 times more likely chance to get into NTU compared to poor students. And this is because privileged students, they're exposed to learning materials early on, such as English, which gives them an advantage in future learning. And another implication of this is that most resources are given to a minority amount of urban schools. And if we take the example of Taiwan, they actually have 34 urban schools and 80 rural schools, which means that there's a huge disparity in the amount, but most of the resources actually go into urban schools, which just shows the resource inequality. Next, we first need to define what is a rural school. So the government currently uses a program model, which factors in transportation, culture, living convenience, and also digital environment and social economic conditions to determine if you're a rural school or not. And in all these criteria, rural schools are highly disadvantaged. And this disadvantage leads into certain implications in the 2030 bilingual policy. So what it currently wants to do is to make classes fully English and also have English in other bilingual subjects. But for the proposal to come into fruition, they actually require about 3,800 bilingual teachers, but the current amount of teachers is less than 1,000. So what this means is that the teacher and resources are just going to get pushed towards urban schools, and rural schools are going to be left behind with incomplete bilingual systems. And this leads to problem identification and our analysis, which are the issues that may arise if we just directly push our current goal using the $1 million. So first is the lack of teachers. There's lack of incentives. Even though we have money, there's still lack of incentives to go to rural areas because there's more income opportunities in the city. And there's also inconvenience in rural areas. And next, there's also high turnover rates because for most rural schools, lots of teachers are currently on temporary contracts, so they can just leave whenever they want. And it's also hard to teach in rural schools. So in the current state, no qualified teachers will willingly teach in rural schools, which makes it hard for them to get teachers. And the second issue here is infrastructure gaps. Currently, 71% of Taiwanese rural schools lack educational resources. And this lack of resources include labs, libraries, and also multimedia equipment. Also, 67% do not have personal devices to study with, which makes learning English very difficult due to digitalization. And there's also no physical English books because there's no money for basic infrastructure, and schools in rural places, they don't prioritize English. And lastly, there's no exposure and a bad environment for English in rural settings. So if you look at it in urban area, they have access to cram schools, English kindergartens, and also Western exposure. While in rural areas, students lack engagement and also they don't have like extra classes and also an English environment. This makes it very difficult to directly inject English into these rural schools. And it's also impossible for students to effectively engage in bilingual studies because majority of them don't even know like basic English. So the first proposal here is to directly solve for the lack of teachers and incentives. So the first step is to attract teachers, which is obviously to offer teaching incentives. So the first upfront incentive is about 100,000 cash to lock in contract for 5 years to reduce the turnover rate. And we can still, and these teachers can still attain regular bonuses, which is very attractive for them. And also provide subsidies, because obviously if you're going to rural areas, you need to like move or have longer distances. So we're going to provide subsidies for transportation and also housing. Next, we want to move on to retaining teachers. So we can offer additional perks. So for my plan, I'm going to save up parts of the 1 million to use as bonuses for teachers after 5 years, because we don't know if they're going to like leave after the 5 years plan. And I'm also going to hire part-time assistants for teachers, and they can become like teachers in the future in case like the original one leaves. And next, we're going to focus on increasing teacher quality, and this also helps us like retain our teachers. So we're going to provide a fully funded training. The first one is a TESOL certificate, which is an international training program that helps individuals teach non-native speakers. And then we're going to also offer our own training, which is Ministry of Education Advanced Rural English Teaching Certificate, which is a 3-year program that requires constant learning sessions and teaching results in order to finish this. And what this allows us to do is that we can make the teachers eligible for promotion and perks only if they have these 2 certificates. And the way to keep them in these rural schools is to let these certificates to be only applicable in rural schools. And these rural schools are the MOE definitions I gave above. And also this gives them a clear professional growth path, so which attracts them to like these rural areas. So this allows us to have a higher quality teaching staff with high incentives to stay, and also create competitiveness against urban schools. And next is we want to create an effective English learning environment. So for year 1, we're going to create a single learning room in like that one school, and we're going to gamify English learning to increase student interest, because right now they don't have engagement. So what we need is like obviously basic smart board and audio equipment and books, and also interactive posters, labeled materials, and QR codes. And what I propose is we can collaborate with companies such as Popperl to make educational AR games. And the reason why I'm not using current platforms is because, like I said, students, they can't understand basic English. So how do you expect them to like use platforms that are completely in English and they need to learn with that. So we need to create our own AR games so that government can apply like what the current level of English the students have. And next is learning adjustments. We're going to have continuous monitoring to ensure quality and also learning improvements. We're going to set up a website that allows teachers to report the results of the classes, and this helps us to extend to other subjects because we can use these results in our data management model, which is we can have classes first, and then these teachers are going to upload the feedback, and we can use a central managing system to have data analysis, and then we can roll out the change so that this system continues to be sustainable. And lastly, in year 5 of our plan, we're going to have our English Everywhere initiative. And basically, we're going to have English immersion in non-traditional learning areas, such as like cafeteria or like playgrounds, where students interact with English daily so that they can be more engaged and more familiar with the language. And also, schools can offer after-school experimental programs for more excelling students, which achieves our second goal. And also have English weeks to help students practice real-life conversations. So like in this week, students must like use English and also incorporate that into like other studies. So what this does is that we can build an English immersed environment to increase engagement and learning efficiency in students. And next is my quantitative analysis. So for my for these 2 graphs, they're both add up to 1 million. And for year 1, most of the money goes into upfront bonus and also the creation of the English classroom. And for year 2 to 5, which is the 4 million distribution, costs are more diversified into training and development of other learning areas. And we also have 150,000 saved per year to ensure sustainability after 5 years plan and to retain the teachers because they can go into bonuses. So for our conclusion, the current problem is that there's a lack of teachers, infrastructure, and student engagement. And we can solve by having teacher incentives and training, also English-driven environment in rural areas to achieve high-quality bilingual classes. And this allows us to create a more competitive Taiwan by expanding bilingual education to rural areas and achieve the 2 goals listed. Thank you.
So we always love the competition. Yeah, actually, I have 2 questions for you. One is, no English school, if you get the idea from, do you have any results for yourself, say, no English school? Okay, so you do have some.
Actually, let me find. Oh wait, sorry. So I actually don't have like the exact stat for that, but basically right now, I'm saying that there's a lack of English books because, as we all know, like most of the resources they go into urban like schools, right? But like there's a lack of money for these rural schools, and what they prioritize first is obviously like other forms of education such as like Chinese education, science, or math, and English actually gets like pushed back because students aren't really engaged, and also there's like a lack of teachers, so it really isn't prioritized in rural areas. So they don't like purchase that much English books.
Another question is, did you suggest should we reform the countryside school? Because in terms of the English learning, they have some formula or something to define what the school is. So did you suggest we should, because in terms of the English learning, there should be another something index or something that to define. So did you suggest that?
So this indicator here is for like the definition of like rural classification. So if the school is rural or not, and this definition is for our like applicable certificates. But as for like English learning and like what their ability should be, it really depends on like specific schools or teachers. Because I believe that in this sense, customization is very important because some students they don't even like know English, so it's very difficult for us to have a standardized test and to see if like they need English or not. Instead, we should just like use our data management model to get continuous feedbacks, so we know like what should the right amount should be and what the teachers should focus on.
Actually, I think that's a good point because so you should say something more about this kind of thing because you usually have a definition. Because you probably have your own opinion on how to define this school.
Thank you.
So you mentioned about teachers. So how do you make sure the teachers will stay after you have some hints to check teachers?
Oh, so that is the reason why we're like having these bonus savings for like each year, because as we all know, our type proposal is very incentive based. So we want to keep this amount of cash. So if the teacher leaves, then we can still offer these bonuses in order to like retain them. And also, we have part-time assistants where they can like come in and also take place as the teacher. And lastly, we have other incentives such as acquiring certificates, and these certificates can only be used in rural schools. So if we provide them like training for these and they get these certificates, they have a higher inclination to stay in those schools because they have a clearer professional growth path. Most of them will be like from universities. But yeah, like students who are willing to like volunteer.
So they do it for this.
Actually, we will still like pay them. Like we just need them to like come in. It's also included in like the cost. But they are part time, so like they wouldn't like cost that much. Okay,
But this is a reality, I'm not trying to use it.
okay, I'll remember that in the future. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, dear judges and fellow contestants. Today, I'm going to share my business case about strengthening English quality of Taiwan in rural areas through teacher training and foreign incentives. First of all, this is my executive summary, and first of all, I'm going to state what are our goals, and I'm going to propose a solution, and then talk about my cost and benefit estimation, and then I'm going to conclude everything. First of all, what is our mission? It's to support bilingual education for Taiwanese rural school. And this basically has two parts. And the first part is that English classes are fully English, and that some subjects are introduced with bilingual teachings, while there are some bilingual experimental courses. And furthermore, our main goal is to address the possible problems and to basically ensure that these two goals are achievable. And rural Taiwan's main problem is that there are lack of resources and infrastructure for rural areas for teaching, and also that rural areas have way less teaching resources compared to urban areas. And as you can see from this table, English resources are not really that available in Taiwan, and this shows that the main problem is that there are not enough capable English teachers. And the problem that there's not enough capable English teachers can be caused by two reasons. The first reason is that there are not enough amount of foreign teachers, and the second is that the native teachers are not qualified enough. And this is showed by this graph, because this graph shows that basically the ability of the qualification of English teachers, and the orange part are the foreign teachers, while the blue parts are the native teachers, showing that native teachers are not really that good at English. And the second part is that there are not enough foreign teachers. Okay. For my proposal, the first part is to basically train native teachers, and the first part is to have tutor ABC and to teach classes at Saturdays and Sundays for these native teachers so that they can improve their quality of English. And then for foreign teachers, to teach these native teachers classes after school during weekdays. And if they meet a quota of around 15 days per month, they will have a bonus of 5K and 2 more days off. So these are basically the incentives for native teachers to learn more English and to increase their quality. The second part is to incentivize foreign teachers to stay longer, more foreign teachers to stay. And the first part is to have an easy card that has 500 NT per month, and this will increase the convenience for foreign teachers and improve their overall standard of living. While the second part of this foreign teacher program is to subsidize travels to local events, because one of rural Taiwan's strengths is that they have natural beauties and cultural uniqueness, and I plan to use this to incentivize foreign teachers to come to Taiwan. This is my development timeline and cost and benefit estimation. So we have a budget of 1 million per year, and there are two parts: native teachers training and subsidizing foreign teachers. And for native teacher training, the cost is for the tutor ABC is around 324K per year, and the bonuses are around 540K per year, while the costs for subsidizing foreign teachers are around 100K per year for the easy card, and for the subsidizing events around 54K per year. And the benefits of this entire proposals are to improve the native teacher quality and amount, and and increase the quantity of foreign teachers. Thank you, everyone. That's the end of my presentation.
So first question is, what's the size of your school or the number of the students? I think you show the student usually comes like 300 or something like that.
Yeah.
I know, I think they trust my whether it's a teaching solution. So I'm curious because we gather this information. So how the size do you think your elementary school is?
Basically, I'm trying to increase the amount of native teachers that are qualified. So this will be around 15 teachers. So, yeah.
So a little more detail. If you're a teacher, so I would like to think you the elementary school.
Oh yeah, because for every single as you can see on the first goal is that some subjects are going to be introduced with bilingual teachings. That means that, for example, maybe math or science, these teachers will still be able to. They still need to be more qualified, so that, for example, so my estimates is around like 3 teachers per grade because there are 6 grades. So maybe math, science, and another subject, and then the fee for tutor ABC is around $60 USD per month. So that times 12 months, and subjects is basically around that.
Then it's been more of your time to focus on the teacher. The shortage of teacher, you find a way to help the teacher to learn more English.
Yeah.
The how's your opinion about the student and the mentors, the student in the urban, how to let the motivation to learn the English? How's your opinion?
My opinion is that the original trajectory that the rural areas of elementary rural areas schools are learning at is originally they're going to do well, but because of these teacher shortage problems, that they will not be able to reach that goal. So that I'm just basically removing that problem.
But how to make the student have the motivation to learn English? Because we provide more teachers to teach them the English.
Yeah.
But do they have a motivation? How to build up the motivation for them to learn more English?
And try to answer the question based on the slides you have.
Okay. But I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you can build out the English environment to have their motivation, and the other person said maybe use the game or the apps, like this way, yeah.
Because I think that rural areas are not really that focused on technology, so I don't think games or apps are that. Yeah.
I just wondered, you mentioned Tutor ABC, so the cost for Tutor ABC, regarding the cost for Tutor ABC, does it contain the cost for hardware like iPads or other
This is why for this proposal is basically like you're going to teach the native teachers, so I already assume that the native teachers already had the equipment to learn from Tutor ABC. Because like if it's catered to students, then maybe they don't have the equipment at home, maybe they don't have a computer, but for I think for teachers they probably already have.
So we need to expand English proficiency through immersion, and this is my plan for Bilingual 2030. Honorable judges, fellow contestants, I am contestant number 11, and this is my plan to achieve Bilingual 2030 in rural schools. So first of all, we need to answer a simple question. What is Bilingual 2030? So the government, the Ministry of Education has seen that Taiwanese English proficiency is very low compared to other countries such as European countries and South American countries. And they realized that Taiwanese citizens fail to compete against foreign workers in English fluency and capacity. As we can see, Taiwan's this very little yellow dot here. And it's considered low English proficiency. So the plan is to make English an official language. They would do this by teaching classes in English, having immersive English classes, achieving an English radio or TV channels, and having university credits in English. So I think the current plan is to have 20% of all university courses, university credits for each student taught in English, and this will increase to 50% by 2030. So the plan is that we will have a bilingual country by 2030, and that Taiwanese citizens can compete in a global market against foreign workers such as those in Singapore or the Philippines or Malaysia. So, problem analysis. Why is Bilingual 2030 falling behind in KPIs in rural areas? So first of all, the strength. There's strong support for bilingual initiatives in Taiwan. As we could see, around 60-something% of people either strongly support or support bilingual initiatives in a recent 2023 Yahoo survey of over 50,000 people. So we can see that there is popular support for bilingual initiatives in the population, and we can also see that English after-school classes are very popular in Taiwan, which shows that parents are willing to support implementation of these bilingual schools. That's one of the strengths we have. However, we have a lot of weaknesses. So first of all, teacher cost and availability. Only 10% of these teachers can teach classes in English, and this number is especially lower in rural areas. Not enough teachers are willing to teach in traditional classrooms. Most of them expect to earn more money in cram schools or their own classes. And so because teacher salary is low and most English proficient teachers live in big cities and prefer to live in big cities, we have a limited English proficient teachers in rural areas. Now again, we also have the immersion problem. So for Taiwanese education, we focus primarily on tests and memorization. And these are not, and because classes in English that they want for integration are usually unimportant, like drama, art, or PE, English is not really considered a means of communication for Taiwanese students. Similarly, because there's not enough English classes, usually in elementary school, there's only 1 or 2 periods a week, and English is not spoken outside English class. There's not enough courage for students to speak English outside of classes, which limits their use and makes it significantly harder for English to be used as a bilingual language in 2030. So, proposal, how do we attract English proficient teachers? I propose the Teacher Intern Exchange Program. We'll hire aspiring teachers abroad as exchange interns. They'll be from other schools in other universities, and they'll be like students in their university years trying to get their teaching degrees. We target those from Australia, Singapore, United States, Canada, UK, and New Zealand. These countries might want to come to Taiwan and work with our universities and our schools in order to reach these teacher intern exchange program. Now, ignore these. Right, so the benefits are obviously these teachers or teacher interns have inherent English proficiency. English is their first language. They're very proficient in teaching in English, and they're very confident in being able to teach classes completely in English. Now, they can teach a variety of elementary school subjects because, let's be honest, anyone with English proficiency can teach very simple, 1st to 6th grade courses as long as you understand the courses are very basic. And since these teachers are expected to work in elementary schools and they're there to intern, they probably have the proficiency needed already. Now, we don't need to pay them a lot, just internship salary, because we expect them to be overseen by our teachers that are more senior. And also we give them, they have immersive English accents that be more useful for people that want to learn English to learn, and it'll be more, I guess, authentic or immersive. Now, we can also promote Taiwan as a unique opportunity for exchange. As you can see, there's like a lot of natural wonders in Taiwan, and teachers might be willing to come like as a kind of fun gap year way, and they'll be more willing to help in Taiwan. Now, I also propose intensive classes. Now, as we know in linguistics, that the L1 critical period starts from birth and ends around 5 to 6. So I found research that English classes in Taiwanese elementary schools only start in 3rd grade. Now, this is already too late for the L1 critical period. Students aren't immersed during their L1 and they can't learn it as well as their native language. I propose we start as soon as possible. We start from 1st grade where their brains are still wired to be able to take in languages, and therefore they could learn English as well as Mandarin, their native language, or Taiwanese or other kinds of Aboriginal languages. And I also want more English classes from 1 to 2 per week, usually in elementary schools, especially starting from 3rd grade. They only have 1 class, and then from 4, 5, 6, they have 2. Now to 4 classes per week. This makes it more intensive and drills English into the minds of students harder. Since, of course, 1st grade students, they're basically a blank slate. You teach them anything, they'll learn it. It doesn't matter what language it is. It might as well be French or German. So this is very useful to learn that if we start early, we have a better effect. Now, we also should encourage use outside of classes. Now, currently the classes, as I've mentioned, are for tests, teaching grammar and stuff like that. We should switch it to a more conversational focus, which is especially useful since we have, teachers abroad, teacher interns that are looking to learn to, build a career. And so we prioritize more oral exams or projects instead of tests and focus less on grammar. Now, we also will have English and bilingual posters around the school to encourage further use and promote English classes instead of a place for memorization as a haven for language practice. This makes it so that classes will match language acquisition, and there'll be a higher willingness for students to learn English. Now, this is a timeline. Phase 1 around this year, next year, we'll be advertising Taiwanese teaching internships for those student teachers abroad. We'll be adding English classes 1st and 2nd grade and revamping classes to new curriculums. In around the middle stage, we'll hire 3 to 4 teacher interns for foreign universities, expanding numbers of classes from 1 to 2 per week to 4 per week. And if we get positive feedback, request funds for more teacher interns and teach them experimental classes through English. Now, of course, since we have these new curriculum, we'll also ensure periodic survey and adjust accordingly to feedback from students and teachers alike. Now, this is the quantitative analysis. We have $1 million per year. That's allowed for if we give a stipend of $25K per month and maybe a low bonus, around $300K per teacher intern per year. This will allow us to hire around 3 to 4 staff per year, and on a class size of 35 per class, 5 to 6 periods per class per week, and like 2024 periods per teacher, we can get 500 students, which is around the size of a decent elementary school. So in essence, we'll have a multilingual Taiwan, bridging tradition and innovation. Thank you. Right. So we could, first of all, cooperate with large universities in Taiwan, for example, NTU or NTNU, that primarily hire teachers, ask them for exchange programs. We could also cooperate with, of course, the Ministry of Tourism, because Taiwan has a lot of unique opportunities for exchange and like all of these natural wonders. So if we could show them, Taiwan is a great place through these branding help from other ministries or universities like that, they'll have the opportunity to work with us, and it'll be less of a hassle because a lot of different elementary schools can take advantage of this platform.
Interns to teach us to change do you have any idea about the system of making the foreign teachers to teach our language students?
So you mean how we could match the teachers to the schools, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's a very good question. Thank you so much. And I propose that either these schools can individually apply through a program with the large universities. Like if some elementary schools say, oh, I would need, say, 3 or 4 teacher interns. Is it possible for you to help me find it from other universities around the world? Then these, universities could help, or Ministry of Tourism, or they could also, find teachers that are willing to do that on their own.
Okay, I got my question is, how is your 1 year? The reason I ask is, you want to increase the teaching hours from 1 to 2 hours a week to 4 hours, right?
Yes.
And I assume you don't have the government power. Actually, at least if you want to increase 2 hours class, you must have something that comes out.
Right.
So how about you only use 1 million? Achieve that goal?
So you mean how would I have new courses, extend new courses?
More hours, but you can't reduce other.
Yes, of course. So obviously from 1 to 2 to 4, that's around like 2 to 3 more classes. And as we could see, there's usually, like for elementary school students, they usually don't have after school classes on, I believe, Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays or something like that. So if we could, extend class a little bit, we wouldn't be eating into any of the critical classes time, while also allowing for, these English classes or periods in English to occur still around 5 to 6 per week. Of course, 5 to 6 also includes classes taught in English that aren't actually English class, for example, science and social studies. I hope that answers your question.
I would like you to think like there's 2 extra hours.
Right.
So, for example, you 1 million only subside to the teacher, or you also give some students some benefit to attend to the 2 more hours class.
Right. We hope that, there's not a lot of budget, especially for rural students. And, I hope that if students are willing to learn because of like how English is promoted, not as a place for tests, but instead more as a haven for language practice. Because again, you can't really give students money and expect them to come to class. That's not very reasonable. So hopefully they're just willing to learn as a result of, increased staff, and also like these new and fun teacher interns, because of course they're probably only staying for a year or 2, so it's very fun. Thank you so much.
Hi. So hello everyone, I'm contestant number 87, and today I'll be talking about bridging the gap between sustainable bilingual education solutions for rural Taiwan. So first, onto the table of contents. The first part is the overview, where I'm going to talk about the current state of rural schools. The second is the proposal, where I'm going to give solutions to suggested problems. And the third is the quantitative analysis, where I'm going to give details and quantitative analysis about the cost and break it down. And the last one is the conclusion and the brief timeline. So it's a brief implementation plan about what I'm going to do in these 5 years. So first, onto the overview. We have to already decide what is a rural school or a remote school. So here are the standards. There's 3 conditions that need to be met in order for it to become a rural school. It has to be located in remote areas with inconvenient transportation. It has to have a distance between the school gate and the public transportation stop is more than at least 5 kilometers. And it's more than 5 kilometers away from the village with no public transportation to reach it. And it's also a big reason why a lot of teachers don't really want to work in rural areas, since there's no transportation for them to go anywhere. And it's a really repelling and attractive part for rural areas. The next part is a brief overview for rural areas and some stats I really want to talk about. So first part, there's an example where in Tainan City, there were 121 job vacancies for bilingual teachers. There were 160 applicants and only 89 passed the test. Parents are also often more traditional and don't have higher education. They also have less digital devices. And Taiwan also faces a shortage of over 1,000 substitute teachers for elementary and high schools nationwide for bilingual teachers. So the goals of the policy right now for bilingual 2030 its English classes are conducted fully in English, and some subjects are introduced with bilingual teaching in elementary schools, while some run bilingual experimental courses for qualified students. So what exactly is the problem here? So onto the problem analysis. The first part is teacher shortages. As many of the people have mentioned, the shortage of teachers nationwide means that less teachers are allocated with rural areas, since most people don't want to get in rural areas for many reasons, like they want to stay in urban areas for the higher opportunities and higher pay. As you can see from the graph there, the graph represents the global average difference between the rural and urban areas for their qualified and unqualified teachers. So most teachers in rural areas are way less qualified than those in urban areas and often don't have full education. So the core problem right now isn't actually there's teacher shortages, but actually that these teachers aren't qualified enough to teach in rural areas, and instead there's already a lot of people who want to be teachers, but there's just not enough education for them to do so. And the next thing is limited technological resources, which is a part of allocation problems. There's internet connectivity issues in urban, which are higher broadband coverage. In rural, there's a lower broadband coverage with only 63%. And access to digital devices, with urban having a higher availability of digital devices, and rural places having fewer devices per student, and it's limited access to digital devices since most of them don't really have the money to pay for it. And another thing is the teacher's use of technology. In urban parts, there's greater integration of technology in classrooms, and in rural, there's less frequent use of technology in classrooms. It hinders access to essential resources and increases the education disparities between rural and urban areas. So how exactly are we going to solve this? The first part is the proposal. It's a development program for teachers. Step 1 is going to survey and teachers to identify gaps in bilingual teaching and technology use. 2 is to collaborate with experts to design courses. 3 is to use sources like MOOCs or Taiwan's National Open University or NTU for border rule training. And the 4th step is to offer certifications, small stipends, and a peer support network for teachers. The step 5 is to gather feedback and then scale the program and also continue developments in which we're going to do a small group first and then slowly increasing the quality of the people inside our program. So the benefits of these is teachers develop way more effective bilingual teaching strategies. Teachers teach more engaging interactive lessons for students when the students won't feel bored. And there's a low-cost training accessible to all rural teachers. It's also set towards bilingual policy, ensuring equal opportunities in rural and urban, and supports the goal of bilingual and globally competitive society by 2030. It prepares teachers to deliver bilingual education effectively. It also increases educational quality and sustainability. The second solution and proposal right now is community hubs. So it's supposed to be like Japanese internet cafes, but it's actually not really a cafe, and instead it's a place where everybody gathers together and uses internet or computers to learn or play games, etc. So we're going to convert underutilized spaces into community technology hubs, digital devices, high-speed internet during class or after, and collaborate with tech companies to provide free or subsidized computers that we don't have to take all the money out of our own budget. And these hubs will allow the students and teachers to access online bilingual education content. As previously mentioned, for example, Duolingo and Canon Tanvi, or massive online courses, etc. And it improves digital literacy and support bilingual education while allowing students to study English after school. The effectiveness of this is for both of the solutions. It's really effective since it offers teachers incentives like career investment, offers student incentives such as engaging learning methods, and makes rural areas competitive. Also supports the bilingual 2030 policy by providing the skills and tools needed for bilingual education. Tech companies also subsidize because of CSR, or corporate social responsibility. So next is the quantity analysis. It's 840,000 NT for the first year of expansion and 810,000 NT per year for 2 to 5 years of the plan. The total use after plan finish is about 4,080,000 NT, and the rest is for the continuing the proposals or if there's unexpected risks or costs. And this is the conclusion. For timeline, the year 1 is basic planning. We're going to establish tech partnerships, deploy first batch of digital devices, and train teachers. In year 2, we're going to test and expand. So we're going to expand teacher training, distribute 100 more devices, and introduce more advanced teaching strategies. And for year 3 to 5, we're going to evaluate and optimize by integrating AI into course, if possible, and blending literature and also using bilingual into classes by reaching the goal in the end. And by targeting both the students and the teachers' problems, it introduces the most efficient solution for reaching our goals for a bilingual 2030. And aim for a bright future and bilingual future with Taiwan. Thank you. That's a really good question. But firstly, right now, the reason we don't want to integrate AI first is because right now the students don't really have a basic understanding of English. So if we just introduce and integrate AI, they may not accept it or feel like it's another like really alien thing to them since they don't really have infrastructure or digital infrastructure and aren't really used to it. So the problem is like right now they won't accept it and they don't understand what the AI is going to say. So if we implement it after during the 3 to 5 years, then this time they already have basic English learning abilities and also understand what the AI is going to say, and also probably more accepting of digital devices since it's integrated into their classrooms.
Wrong. I mean, actually, it is for the school, right? So the first or second year, the student can actually make something already written because the student coming in. So I assume this is the training program, the timeline for the school. So that means if I'm the first year in this school, but I'm in the program, the third year, I will be limited to use my AI using, right?
So basically, what I'm saying is that even if it comes they come into the school late and into in year 3 or year 5 where there's already integrated AI, the teachers will probably still gradually allow them to use this, and because of the internet cafes or the community technology hubs in school, they can probably go there after school to learn English and get accustomed to the digital learning process and with the AI, and probably would accept it faster than most students during the plan. I think it actually assists both since the AI we're already integrating into course, so it will answer all the students' problems. It will also help teachers since if they don't understand the student's question, or because if their English levels are too far apart, it helps actually both of these groups and actually helps them to overall and even in year 1 or year 6, since they all probably have some questions that they don't really know and teachers can't answer. So if they ask the AI, they'll probably understand it way better than if they ask the teacher who doesn't understand it.
So you also mentioned evaluation. What's your plan for how would you evaluate?
Okay, that's a really good question. But for every year after, we're actually going to evaluate all of the teachers. So they're actually going to have to fill out the form, and there's going to be monitoring, and we're also going to send officials to the school in order to see how they're actually teaching the class, and if the teachers are actually proficient in English after going through their training program. And tying it back to my training program in Proposal 1, because of this, they're actually going to continue learning and proficiently using English during these 5 years, and this means that their English is actually going to improve throughout these 5 years, every year, and they'll get a certificate every year if they pass the certain tests that you need for every year of the program. Thank you.
好，谢谢各位在今天早上到下午的准备及报告，大家都表现得很棒。但是现在呢，我们要先进行评审的这个会议。那这个阶段要请大家先暂时离场。那我们现在的时间是下午3点20分。那给大家30分钟的休息时间，大家可以稍作休息，或者是走走晃晃，买点吃的都可以。我们希望大家在3点50分。